At the dawn of the millennium, basically everyone was looking forward to the start of a new millennia, a new era, a new turn of the page, assuming that the Y2K scare wouldn't end up destroying everything first. For those of you Gen Z and Gen Alpha listeners, ask your parents about it. And few were more excited to turn the page on the past century more than Pete Weber, bowling bad boy and man in desperate need of an adjustment. After a wildly successful, because of all of his titles, and wildly wild, because of all the drugs and alcohol, career throughout the 1980s and the 1990s, Weber's game was in danger of getting left behind. Equipment, rule, and style changes by the Pro Bowling Association in efforts to stay solvent had inadvertently taken away Pete's natural advantages at the game, and he was struggling to keep up. Rather than throw in the towel, Pete went back to work. With his brother Rich Weber, Pete spent several hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to tweak his delivery so that his natural side spin when throwing the ball, already quite pronounced, was manageable with the newer, slipperier balls that the PBA had their athletes working with. Pete didn't have a choice. As he put it, quote, "I had to learn, because I really didn't want to go to college," end quote. With the help of his brother's coaching as well as a new wrist brace, Weber started getting his groove back, making several televised finals in 1996. Quote, "I got my attitude back, I had fire in my eye, I was ready to go," Pete said of the developments. But even he had little idea just how far he would go. And with the turn of the century and the rise of the internet, Pete Weber wouldn't just become a star again. He'd become a legend. I'm Mike GW, and you're listening to Surreal Sports Stories. Now, just as Pete Weber was emerging from the ashes himself, the league around him was experiencing a bit of a renaissance too. Now, the Pro Bowling Association, long the stalwart organization of organized bowling, was close to insolvency at the turn of the millennium. In 1995, Eddie Elias, the PBA's founder, suffered a stroke and was no longer able to commit the time and energy he needed to give the league the support that it needed. In 1997, ABC Sports dropped their 36-year relationship with the PBA, ending a long-time reliable TV contract. The following year, all of the sponsors were gone, and the number of players on tour had shrunk to less than 2,000 across the nation. The number of bowling alleys officially sanctioned by the PBA, once as high as 10,883 in 1963, had dropped to just 5,973 by the year 2002. Now some, like Mark Miller, the spokesman for Bowling Inc., which manages bowling associations and governance bodies across the U.S., blamed factors ranging from workplace and cultural shifts, women were working now, which made it harder for women's morning leagues to organize, commutes getting longer, making it harder to get to a league after work, and even the decline of manufacturing jobs, which made late-night bowling leagues less viable for people. No matter the case, the primary issue was money. If the league didn't have money, then that was that. But as luck would have it, the PBA would find a series of angel investors, and those angels came bearing the good news in the wings of Microsoft. Well, sorta. Steve Miller, Mike Slade, and Rob Glazer had all started at Microsoft in the 1980s, and they'd been part of the core group of wise men, though some might call them lucky bastards, who'd placed their hopes in stock options for a then-growing company called Microsoft. Now, seeing as how Microsoft shares rose 6,000% in the first 10 years as a publicly traded company, they looked like geniuses. And rich geniuses at that, with cash to burn. In March of 2000, the three got together and purchased the PBA for the grand sum of, well, the amount was never publicly disclosed, but most estimates put it at around $5 million. So roughly 0.7% of Shohei Ohtani's contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not bad if you got the money for it. Now, the new owners of the league went to work to clean things up. First, they got a new TV contract with Disney's ESPN cable television network. And it looked like things were on the rise. According to an article in the Los Angeles Times published in 2003, quote, average TV viewership was 775,000 households last year, up from about 570,000 in 2000. That beat ESPN's ratings for the National Hockey League, which averaged about 400,000 households for 21 regular season games. End quote. The new owners also increased the prize money pot for players, which led to an increase of more than 4,000 pro players between 2000 and 2003, which was about 47% increase. Now, what was driving the change and the positive growth in addition to the money? Well, simple. The league was trying to be in your face. The new ownership got rid of the old 1940s rules that required players on the tour to have short haircuts. They removed noise rules, allowing fans to cheer, and they started splashing corporate signage everywhere. Okay, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And there was a clear attitude shift at the top. As the then PBA chairman Chris Peters put it, quote, "The show isn't so much about bowling as it is combat. It's the victor versus the vanquished," end quote. That's awfully aggressive language for bowling, dude. This ain't the Crusades. But with a new need for attitude, the league would need players who fit that mold. Gee, who do you think they started promoting? If the PBA was looking for someone to market their new league image with, well, then they really couldn't have done better than Pete Weber. Now, he could cut loose, with more crotch chops, more angry outbursts, and more, well, bad boy antics. And if this all sounds like yet another forced way of mentioning professional wrestling as an inspiration point, it's not forced. Pete Weber would tell you that himself. As The Athletic noted, quote, "His famous crotch chops come from D-Generation X, a faction of wrestlers in the WWE in the late 1990s. At tournaments where music is played, Weber's song following strikes was the entrance music for Triple H. He calls himself PDW and points to himself like Rob Van Dam. His dog is named after current WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. He once met Andre the Giant through his dad and played golf with a member of the Road Warriors tag team." End quote. I gotta say, Pete Weber might be a bigger pro wrestling fan than me, and I don't say that lightly. Although maybe it wasn't so much just about the bad boy antics that led to this change. Because by 1997, after several failed marriages and relationships, Pete Weber married Tracy Weber. And that, quite frankly, was the partnership he needed. As Pete himself would put it, quote, "Tracy is the best thing that ever happened to me. She keeps me focused and keeps me loose," end quote. After serving one last conduct suspension in 2000 as a result of a late 1999 incident involving his drinking issues, Pete Weber fully returned to the league. By 2001 to 2002, he'd won 3 titles. In one of those victories, during a nationally televised match at the Great Lakes Classic, he bowled a 299, missing a perfect 300 by 1 pin on his final shot. The bad boy of bowling was back, baby. And he had carte blanche, so to speak, with the bosses. As Weber put it in 2001, quote, "The new PBA has told me to be animated, and I was already animated to begin with. The new PBA likes me, likes my antics. They think that's what's going to sell the PBA," end quote. During one match in 2001 against Michael Hogan Jr., who was trying to get his first PBA Tour victory, Weber sealed a 289 to 279 victory and then snapped, "He ain't getting his first one against me, no way." Remember that clip I played last episode of Pete angrily yelling at a photographer? You know, this.
Do not flash the camera in my approach. I'm telling you, don't do it. She flashes that camera again on my approach. I hear it. Don't do it again.
That moment was in 2010 at the One-A-Day Dick Weber Classic. Again, that's a toned-down Pete Weber, one who is, sorta, at peace with himself. Now, as far as the new era of bowling and Pete Weber was as its face, reactions were somewhat mixed. Pete put it this way, quote, Some people really liked it, and other people said, that's really disgusting. To the people that didn't like it, oh well, get over it. End quote. Classic Pete. But nothing could prepare the world, and Pete, frankly, for what would happen next. The year is 2012. It's the PBA Tour's annual U.S. Open. That's one of the biggest tournaments on the PBA calendar. Basically like, I don't know, the Daytona 500 of bowling. Or the Super Bowl of bowling. Well, maybe not the Super Bowl. Okay, the Final Four. The Final Four, there we go. Now, I hesitate to call it the Super Bowl of bowling, but seeing as how I just did, I think you get the idea. But there's actually a lot riding on this one. So at this point, Pete Weber might be the face of bowling, but he's not getting any younger. He's pushing 50, and it's only getting harder and harder to win these tours as the younger players get faster and better. And he really, really wants to win this one. If he wins the U.S. Open this year, he will have won his 5th of his career, which would be a new record for most U.S. Open victories by a PBA pro. He's currently tied with the record holder, his father, Dick Weber, who passed away in 2005. Dick and Pete patched up any of their issues after the wild times of the 1980s and the 1990s, and Pete missed his father terribly. But he's got his work cut out for him in this tournament. See, Pete entered the event as the lowest seed in the tournament, and seeing as how the U.S. Open works on a stepladder format, Pete would have to beat the numbers 3 and 2 seeds in order to get to the championship match. That's not exactly a cupcake. But Pete Weber is still Pete Weber. He wins the first match, and then in his next match he gets a stroke of luck, no pun intended. Jason Belmonte, essentially the new top dog of bowling, missed 2 pins on his final shot, allowing Pete to squeak by with a victory. Now, Pete was also winning these matches while trying to keep his temper in check. Maybe the stress was getting to him. And as he was working his way through the first 2 matches, Weber kept looking towards the crowd. According to some eyewitness accounts, there was a heckler in the audience that was getting under his skin. As one write-up of the event put it, quote, "It was incredibly awkward and confusing because no one had any idea who he was talking to," end quote. Repeatedly throughout the day, Weber would bowl and then point to the person, even asking the judges if they could move the heckler. At one point he snapped, "It's called sportsmanship, pal," to this mystery heckler. So as he's trying to match the legacy of his father and fighting uphill against some stiff competition, Pete Weber apparently was dealing with some knucklehead who was trying to get him off his game. It's like watching a lit fuse of dynamite slowly making its way to the explosive end. It was just a matter of time. It all came down to the final, with Pete Weber facing off against Mike Fagan. Neither man was able to establish a clear lead, and it literally came down to the final frame. Pete had the final roll. He literally had to bowl a strike to win. If he missed 1 pin, it was a tie. If he missed 2, he would lose. Now, normally I would give you a write-up of what went down. Instead, I think I'll let you hear it for yourself.
Strike to claim it. A strike to claim it. And he got it!
That is right, I did it! That's number 5! Are you kidding me? That's right! Who do you think you are? I am! Get it right!
Oh God, that's incredible. Let's hear that again.
Strike to claim it. A strike to claim it. And he got it!
That is right, I did it! That's number 5! Are you kidding me? That's right! Who do you think you are? I am! Get it right!
Okay, so if you need a breakdown, here's what happened. Pete Weber bowled a strike, in case you couldn't tell, securing a 215-214 victory over Mike Fagan to claim his 5th career U.S. Open title. And in the immediate aftermath of his victory, You heard him let loose the most hilariously over-the-top, angry, and incomprehensible rant of victory you've ever heard. That was Pete Weber screaming in the background there, celebrating. That's him when he's happy. Now, shortly after this outburst, Pete did have a more reserved moment. He walked over to his wife Tracy in the front row, kissed her, and then crouched and hid his face. He was still mic'd up and you could hear him crying. Afterwards, he gave a heartfelt response, quote, "Dad, I know you were watching. I know you're proud. And I'm sorry I broke your record." End quote. He also said quite possibly the funniest thing imaginable given the context, quote, "That's probably the calmest I've ever been, needing to throw a shot to win. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm prouder of myself than anyone else. I've always wanted to be the one to throw a strike to win." End quote. Now, getting your 5th U.S. Open title, that's great. Passing your father, that's an incredibly powerful moment, etc., etc. But nobody cared about that. All anyone wanted to talk about were those 8 incredible words.
That's number 5. Are you kidding me? That's right. Who do you think you are? I am. Get it right.
First of all, what the hell was he even trying to say there? Now, after the fact, Pete Weber clarified, quote, "What I really wanted to say was, who do you think you are rooting against me? I'm the man of this tournament. That's what I really wanted to say, but as everybody knows, it's, who do you think you are? I am." Which, it caught on. It's a worldwide catchphrase now. End quote. It was an angry flub, yes, and he was also correct that the world ran with it. T-shirts with the phrase started selling left and right. ESPN's Not Top 10 listed it as their number 1 moment, because while it was amazing and hilarious, it was still a goof. By Pete's own admission, he's recorded thousands of cameo videos where you pay a celebrity to say something with him signing off using the line. And in such a raw, authentic moment of emotion, the world just loved it. Gary Thorne, the ESPN announcer who called the tournament and who's the other voice in that legendary clip, remarked, quote, "It's one of those pure moments in sports that you couldn't create if you tried. People don't get tired of seeing it, don't get tired of watching it. Every time it comes up for an anniversary or is being talked about somewhere, I go back and take a look at myself because it's a treat. It makes me smile." End quote. But there's another question to ask about this moment, and part of what makes this all so incredible. And that question is, who was the heckler that Pete Weber was so pissed off at? Well, Gary Thorne was confused, remarking, quote, "We were trying to figure it out. Was someone heckling him? We wanted to figure out who it was and we never found anyone." End quote. Now, Mike Fagan, Weber's opponent that night, claimed that if you hooked him up to a lie detector test, he'd say there wasn't a heckler. But Pete's wife, Tracy, tells a different story. According to her, Pete was, quote, "yelling at a little kid, maybe 10 or 12 years old." There's no way that's true. Right, Pete? Right? Well, quote the man himself. "I guess what everybody wants to know is where did I come up with who do you think you are, I am? Well, being caught up in the moment of throwing the strike and being as excited as I was, I had a kid rooting against me during the match, and he was doing it just loud enough for me to hear. And it kind of made me mad, and people know, don't make me mad on TV because I'll just get better." End quote. That means that this moment,
Who do you think you are? I am.
was directed at a child. Pete Weber was screaming at a child. That is absolutely psychotic. That is surreal. Now, after the fact, apparently they did find the kid who might have distracted Weber. And after the PBA commissioner made sure that the kid, understandably, wasn't terrified to meet the man who'd screamed at him, Weber signed a pin for the kid. I don't know, I'm not sure how I'd feel about that if I was that kid, to be honest. But that's the thing. You ask people about Pete Weber, they're probably not going to talk about his bowling career first. They're probably going to bring up, who do you think you are? I am. Now, lest you think that Pete Weber's quote has started to fade from the cultural zeitgeist, I am happy to assure you that that is simply not the case. During the 2022 NFL season playoffs, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Buffalo Bills on the road in Buffalo. Cincinnati's quarterback, Joe Burrow, was caught on mic celebrating a big play against Buffalo by yelling at a teammate, "I'm him." The following week, however, the Bengals fell short against the Kansas City Chiefs 23-20. And after the game, Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes took to Twitter. The only text of his tweet was #ChiefsKingdom, and he attached a GIF to his post. What do you think that GIF was? That's right, the best quarterback in the NFL, referencing Pete Weber's outburst for everyone to see. Now, Pat Mahomes posting that was a double joy for Weber. The Chiefs are his favorite team. And as he remarked, quote, "To have Patrick Mahomes tweet that with a picture of me in my little quote, that's pretty cool to me, because that means the younger generation of professional sports know who I am besides young bowlers. I knew some of the older guys in sports knew who I was, but to have Patrick Mahomes do that, what a great honor that is." End quote. Weber has, in case you can't tell, totally and completely made peace with the quote and the fact that that's what he's going to be remembered for, at least by the general public. He once said, quote, "It's never become annoying. It's kind of tough to write on a little card. It's kind of tough to write on that, but on a picture, people request that and I write it. But it's never annoying." End quote. Weber also said that like 99.9% of his cameo requests asked him to say that phrase, and he said, quote, "It doesn't bother me. I know it's something I said. I know it went all over ESPN. It went all over Fox. It went all over the networks. It's kind of flattering to me that it's all still going on." End quote. And as far as other athletes using that moment like Mahomes did, as he put it, quote, "It helped bowling out, and that's fine. If it's helping bowling, then let them use it all they want." End quote. Pete Weber would finally retire from the PBA Tour in 2021, though he still competes in regional events and senior-level tour events. Weber was one of, if not the most accomplished bowlers to ever do it by the time he hung up his shoes. He won 37 PBA Tour victories, 10 major titles, including the 5 U.S. Opens. He kicked his addictions, and he made millions of dollars over the course of a 41-year career. And when he finished up his final official match on March 17, 2021, he looked directly into the camera and said the following, quote, "Hate me or love me, you watched. That's all you could do." End quote. I guess having one of the greatest moments of self-confidence wasn't enough. Old Pete Weber had to go and deliver the second coldest line any athlete has ever delivered. God bless you, man. Now, as much as I want to close this out with my own words on the life and career of this crazy man whose greatest moment was motivated by anger at a child, I think once again I will default to the words of Pete Weber himself. His interview done mere hours after announcing his retirement, where on live television he said the following.
Best win I ever had was winning the Tournament of Champions in '87, because that's something that my family never won. But winning my 5th U.S. Open by a pin, throwing a strike to win. Who do you think you are? I am, and that's fucking right. I am. Sorry. I just had to say that.
Sometimes you just gotta let the subject do the work for you. 'Cause whoever you think you are, Pete Weber is. You've been listening to Surreal Sports Stories. Sources for these episodes have included Sports Illustrated, Britannica.com, SBNation.com, SportsNation.ca, PBA.com, the St. Louis Dispatch, the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, Priceonomics.com, and many more. Audio clips were pulled from the Flow Bowling YouTube channel as well as the PBA Bowling YouTube channel. If you like the show, you can find Surreal Sports Stories wherever you listen to your podcasts. And hey, now you can find us on YouTube. Video forms of the podcast can be found on the Surreal Sports Pod YouTube channel, and you can expect uploads of the new episodes the day after they drop online. Do us a favor and smash that subscribe button and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll also be uploading the archive of old episodes onto YouTube over time, with audio cleanups and adjustments to make the pivot to video even cleaner. You can also find me, your intrepid host, Mike GW, on Blue Sky at thewritingirishman.bsky.social. Again, I'm on Blue Sky at thewritingirishman.bsky.social. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This has been Surreal Sports Stories. You've been amazing, and I've been Mike GW. Stay steady, y'all.